Is Trump causing a recession on purpose in the United States and maybe the rest of the world? Well, today we're going to discuss. Yet again, we have to explain about Trump and economics, Trumpnomics. And a question that we'll try to answer today, is Trump causing a recession on purpose in the United States? And the answer is maybe, and actually I hope it happens. And we're going to explain why. Here's the deal. Since, the Trump administration started just a couple of months ago, we're seeing first a stock market correction around 10%, give or take. Also, the sentiment on the market is not as great. And also this rhetoric that is going to practice actually regarding the tariffs is, let's say, scaring a lot of people. And also we have to combine DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, reducing fiscal spending to the, of course, to the rest of the economy and overall. And remember that in the country of the United States, like the United States, and the economy, like the United States, fiscal spending is very, very important, is a significant part of GDP. So we add up all of these things, and we might have a recession. Well, the odds are actually increasing, and they are very likely. According to a recent study and publication that I saw recently, I don't remember, is the Journal, New York Times. Honestly, I don't remember right now. Well, but this particular publication mentioned that the odds of entering in a recession in the United States are between 40% and 50%, and it goes above 50 if the tariffs are in full effect. And right now, late March of 2025, we are headed towards that particular scenario. Now, why I say that actually I hope it happens? Well, the reason is in order to avoid a stagflation. And let me explain yet again, I'm an economics geek, maybe you're not, but I explain that. Is the combination, and let's put the definition here, is the combination of inflation and lack of economic growth. So it's basically the worst of both worlds. Economists, especially economists tied to the government, like to use this particular tool called the Phillips curve. That's an inverse relationship between unemployment and inflation. These particular economists believe that if inflation is higher and controlled, the unemployment rate is going to be low. And when you have a recession, so usually the inflation rate actually goes way down, but the unemployment rate goes up. However, when you have a stagflation, you have, you can throw that curve out of the window. You have both. You have the worst of both worlds. Unemployment, lack of economic growth, and also high inflation rates. And apparently that was the economy that we are heading when we had the Biden-Harris administration. That's why the reasons, because when you see the charts and the macroeconomic data during the Biden-Harris administration, you see the numbers are actually quite good regarding the stock market, unemployment rate, and things like that. And the inflation was high. The regular inflation rate, not the real one, it was relatively, manageable. But on real terms, for the average citizen, the situation didn't look that great. Money is hard to stretch. You had food inflation. Maybe the gas prices were high, especially when the war in Ukraine started. And, the sentiment for the average citizen wasn't good. And this is something I mentioned this particular young economist, Kyla Skylin, defined as recession. Love the term, by the way. Shout out to you, Kyla, if you watch this. Well, anyways, defines perfectly the situation. an economy that on paper is good, but on real terms is not great for the average citizen. So what's going on is that most likely, if the tendency and the policies continue, on the future, you might have a stagflation. And I think Donald Trump knows this, and just recently he was asked about, the stock market and things like that, and the tariffs and yada yada, and Trump said something around, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something about, what it matters is the real economy. And apparently, that Trump is populist, he cares about this worker class population class. So, on that regard, no, cool on that. But the end result will be that I think I'm not saying he is engineering a recession, but it's just, like I explained yet again, the Jenga tower. The Jenga tower is just, shaking right now. It's close to fall apart, and Trump, I think, is just going to click the last piece in order to cause a recession. Now, the recession will be something like a fever when you have a particular virus on your body. Yeah, we are not going to get into that virus. Yeah, I promise. But let's say a normal one, not the C one. Okay. What happens is that when you have a fever is a response of your body in order to kill that particular virus, to save the body, the human being. But having the fever is difficult to bear, at least for a few days. So I think the recession is gonna be the fever. And here's why. First, you're gonna correct a lot of malinvestment that you have on, basically on the financial economy in the United States. And also remember, the United States is by far the largest economy in the world, around 30 trillion US dollars. So you need to correct a bunch of bad players on the stock market, a lot of corporative debt, a lot of bad things going on right now on the economy, a lot of bad decisions. Combined with the money supply. Something that is going on is that the money supply, let's put here a chart of the Fed, expanded a lot the money supply. And of course, that's one of the reasons that we have inflation, and Trump is involved on that. Of course, the C virus exploited on his face, when he was on the last year of his first term, and most likely why he did not got reelected. Okay. And he had, it was just like a knee-jerk reaction in order to approve the CARES Act that printed a lot of money. So basically, the dynamic that we're having right now in the past, let's say, 6 years, is that in order to keep up, the Jenga tower, this particular, shivering economy, what the U.S. government, Treasury, and the Federal Reserve, that we have to explain that, what they're doing is monetizing, throwing money from the financial economy to, the Fed and the Treasury to the real economy in order to prop up, companies and the stock market and things like that. But the consequence is more money supply, more debt on the U.S. debt that is huge, and actually that's one of the reasons why Trump and Elon created Doge in order to reduce fiscal spending, in order to try to reduce the debt that right now is around 36 trillion US dollars. So basically what happens every time there's one of these big packages is approved, like the CARES Act or the Inflation Reducing Act that actually caused more inflation. But okay, that's just for another. That happened during Biden, and several of these particular bills passed in Congress, and also the military aid to Ukraine and things like that. So what happens is that the Treasury needs money in order to pay for those things. And there are trillions of dollars. So what happens is that they don't have the money because usually the US government runs on a deficit, so they need to borrow money, aka they issue treasury bonds. but the demand for those treasury bonds usually is not as great as the supply when you have these particular acts like CARES Act and things like that, so they require fiscal spending. So the Federal Reserve is gonna buy that particular, more, not all, but a significant cohort of these new issued treasury bills. And depending on the interest rate, it's gonna be cheaper or more expensive for the US government in order to pay for those debts. Calling that, okay. So the end result is that all of this money printing that from the Fed in order to buy the treasury bills that then are expended to the, the overall economy, the real economy, or at least on the big companies, and also some small companies and the trickle-down effect and things like that. So what happens is that is keeping up artificially high the stock market and positive numbers on the real economy. However, I think that what Trump is doing with the narratives are play a second field on that. I don't like particularly the tariffs, but he has a strategy. Okay, let's see what happens. But that's not because of the tariffs. The tariffs are just probably the last trigger, the last Jenga piece on the Jenga tower, and that's what let's say we are speculating right now. So the narrative with the tariffs combined with the budget cuts from Doge that can create the domino effect that will, let's say, cut this particular dynamic and reverse it. So reducing fiscal spending and reducing, let's say, this particular expectations and sentiment of the market that will create a correction or maybe a recession on the stock market, let's say 30%, something like that. Maybe this is just sheer speculation. We'll have a recession not only in the US but worldwide, and maybe we can have the quote-unquote soft landing that is discussed a lot on the Fed, on the financial world, and then maybe Jay Powell from the Fed can reduce drastically and cut the interest rates, and then yet again have a harmonious cycle after this particular recession, let's say by the end of the year, that will play along very good on the economy on the long run, but you have to mitigate the effects on the short term. And also, since Trump is just starting his second period, so he can just get rid with this particular recession on the first year of his last term, and on the rest 3 years, see the good results. This is just a theory, this is just speculation, but, what do you think? Thank you for watching Continental Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media, and if you want to work with us, continentalinsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.